Hi, this is Paula, Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole because we like to go into topics more deeply. Today I'm going to go into topics more deeply from my office here in the laundry room at 26 Gramercy Park. And I'm expecting a call from Randy Steele from Woodstock Public Access. I'm not sure if I'm going to get the call because Randy told me that every Friday when she goes out, Time Warner, who is the service provider for telephone, seems to cut the telephone. So right now, if Randy calls, before she calls, I just want to say, here is the situation with Woodstock Public Access website. It's completely blank. The other day, she was able to see that they were streaming. It appeared from Woodstock that the signal was going out on the World Wide Web, but as you can see here, we've got a blank screen. So what I'm going to do is just position this and have a discussion that I've been very much looking forward to with Randy about what's going on with alternative radio, particularly on the left, and we're going to see what she has to say about that, because I got a really important set of emails from a man named Bob English, who's an activist in California, who is doing kind of the West Coast end of the next phase now that Lynn Stewart has been released, so that this can be, Lynn Stewart's release can be something that will be progressive for all of us. It's something that will evolve us to the next level of the significance of Lynn's work, of her life so far. And of course, we want her to heal her cancer so that now that she's out of prison, she can be even more useful in the area of bringing peace to all. And for those of you who don't know, Lynn Stewart was the defense attorney for the Blind Sheik. And if Randy gets on, she can explain a little bit more, because Randy, she really explained to me, because I really wasn't what you'd call a left activist. My show, Farther Down the Rabbit Hole, was about spirituality and then politics when I became interested in 9/11, and that had to do with looking at a DVD, because I was in India during 9/11 and I only heard about it from afar. I didn't even see the images that everybody else saw on television. But when I came home and I saw a DVD about it, it was quite a few hours long. I remember there was a certain part of the DVD where you could just see the building was just pulverized. It just turned into dust. And I was watching this DVD after a couple others. I think it was one on Krishnamurti's spiritual things. And I said to the person I was watching with, "Oh, look, I got this DVD in the mail. I really should know something about 9/11, because it turns out in this very building, 2 people lost their lives." So there's a legacy that the building itself has. And I had projected all of this on the wall, so I got this first image, probably even bigger and bolder and stronger than most people got with those little computer-generated images that they watched on television. I mean, this was like huge, and I remember not being interested in politics before then, and as I watched, the closest thing I could relate it to, it was like feeling kundalini rushes. It was an awful thing to see, but at the same time you just go, oh my goodness, what is this all about? And that sort of launched my show from spirituality into politics. Right now it's 10:04. If we don't hear from Randy, it probably means that Time Warner up in Woodstock, who is the telephone service provider, isn't really good at providing telephone service for a public access channel, a station, because Randy said this has happened to her several times where the telephone goes out. If the telephone goes out, you can't get calls from viewers. And probably that's one of the most heartbreaking things for a public access producer, to have developed their content And part of the way you develop your content is through the viewership. As viewers watch what you're doing and they give feedback and they give you an idea of what they like, you develop a relationship with them. And you want to make your content better because you want the best of attention from your viewers, but in order to merit that attention, you have to give them the best of what you can offer. And so it's really, really horrible. It's like separating a mother from their child, I would imagine, because I've never been a mother of physical children, but I've certainly birthed a lot of videos on YouTube where I was led to believe free speech was what it was all about, because you could do more on YouTube than I was able to do on cable television. But now I'm beginning to find out that a lot of the corporate policy of Manhattan Neighborhood Network is just that. It's corporate policy. And even with the mission statement, as Manhattan Neighborhood Network has, to provide free speech to the community, it's really up to the community, both the public access producers and the viewers, to demand that the message truly be free so that people can make a connection. Right now, I'm unable to go live as I was in the past with my audience, which was a wonderful thing because you can kind of track how people are responding to material that you're putting out. But more importantly than that, it's a wonderful research and development department. Yay, here's Randy. And they can tell you what they want. Hey, Randy.
Oh, hi. Okay, this is actually working, but I had to try it out briefly.
I'm thrilled.
We're live on the air here, okay. Actually getting set up while we speak, and I'm talking to you on the monitor with the telephone to my ear. So let me put it down and get set up and get you on the air, okay?
Okay, great.
Improv telecasting from Woodstock's public access.
I'm so happy we've got a connection here.
Okay, let me turn this off.
Okay, and tell me when you want to speak, me to speak. Randy's been just so heroic in keeping the kettle boiling up there in Woodstock, but her real passion and heart is with radio broadcasts, and I think she was even involved in pirate radio. We'll hear a little bit about that after she hooks us up, because we're going live right now in Woodstock. Of course, for those of you in Manhattan who are watching this, you're going to be getting this later. Today is it's Monday, the 24th, 2014. And unfortunately, because Woodstock Public Access only has one line, I believe it's not going to be possible for other viewers to be calling in. But the audience in Woodstock is 3,000, whereas here in Manhattan it's purported to be going out to 650,000 households. I don't know if that's been changing month by month. I think a lot of people were letting go of their cable and picking up internet. But on the other hand, I've also been told that the greatest market is still in cable. And so now that Time Warner has been bought out by Comcast, which seems to be the monopoly service provider all over the country, it's a very scary proposition that we're going to have a big monopoly.
Well, just that the good news is that regarding the radio here in Woodstock, all I can say is we are clear from all quarters to build a radio station. So this logjam of information that is occurring because of the Time Warner monopoly on the phones, on the internet, and on cable TV in Woodstock is about to be broken. So that's the only thing I'd say.
Okay, good. Well, keep chiming in because I really, really want your attention on what I'm going to be reading. I want to read some emails that have come in from California from a man named Bob English. So shall I just launch into it?
Go right ahead.
Okay. This came January 23rd from Bob English. He's an activist, and it goes subject, amending partial list. Thanks to active supporters, multi-grats celebrate freeing Lynn Stewart. Should have known we'd be in trouble if we started naming individual Lynn Stewart supporters, relying on memory and feedback. Below is an amended version with a few, not all of the groups and folks we know, many on the West Coast who actively, persistently covered the case and worked for Lynn's release. Obviously, it's not a complete listing, and as we said, please forgive any omissions. Again, our special personal appreciation for the tireless work and inspiration of the Lynn Stewart petition campaign organizers, writers, fellow Vallejo residents, and friends Maya Schoen and Ralph Schoenman and Ralph Pointer in New York City. Also, many thanks to the San Francisco Bay View newspaper, Noel Hanrahan, and Prison Radio, Jeff Mackler, Sheila Hamanaka, Bay Area Community Labor and KPFA activists, including Alan Benjamin, Cynthia Johnson, Chandra Hauptman, and Steve Zeltzer. The Pacifica Radio Foundation National Board, KPFA News, San Francisco Gray Panthers, Paula, Gloria, and Freedom First Party Media Network, the National Lawyers Guild, and other organizations, including Richard Phelps, many more who should be recognized. Obviously, Lynn's release couldn't happen without diverse communities and people pulling together. Also, here's a corrected live link to the January 2nd Democracy Now! Report. The URL on our previous message is okay, but the link didn't work, and he gives the link. Now, I was kind of griping that this is the second time Democracy Now!'s link has broken at the time that a great email blast went out. And that's really a pity, because at that moment is when you've got people's attention. That's when the excitement's there. And you know how people are. They race through their emails. If the link isn't working, they're not going to be going and checking up on it tomorrow. They got a million more emails coming in the next day. So, I had written him and said that I was really, really shocked at what low viewership I was getting for the really excellent videos that I did on Lynn Stewart with Ralph and Betty Davis. And so I was griping about that. And then I decided when I got this, because this came as a second part of all these people who were getting congratulations for Lynn Stewart coming up. And these were people I hadn't heard about. Now, granted, I'm not that, up on the scene, but I do remember talking to you, Randy, months and months ago when it looked really bleak that Lynn would get out of prison. And do you remember what you told me, Randy?
You'd better refresh me, because I don't right now.
You said something that you said, although you could talk about Lynn Stewart, to actually give her material support was almost dangerous. I don't know. Do you remember something?
Yeah, I had heard that from other people who were more involved in her support network.
Right.
That they were being harassed by various government officials.
Right. And so nobody wants any more trouble than they've already got, and you figure, well, God bless Lynn Stewart. I hope the best for her, but to actually help her, it seemed as though it might get you embroiled in all of that. So I had to write directly from my heart here, and I said, "Hi, Bob." Let me see. I said to him, "It appears you only sent this link to yourself. How can it be ascertained that this amended list is to just appease those that really worked on this release versus those Johnny-come-latelys that would be offended to know their negligence is pretty obvious when set side by side with real production? Those that only pretended to help but in truth are looking for angles to help themselves. Everyone complains about the social networks, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, etc., on the internet being run by the usual agencies, Homeland Security, NSA, etc. Yet do they trust enough to be on really open lists where people know who is actually getting what messages? The old days of the internet, when speech was much freer, allowed each group and actual people to really know each other and work together. If a person got annoyed, they could just not open the thread. Now everyone has this artificial artificial good manners of not keeping the sent list open so you know who is actually getting what info. This is not Big Brother's problem. It is a trust issue among ourselves that then allows Big Brother to step in. Beautiful videos that Joe and I did have very little hits. I know about hits, as I have had a 5 million hit YouTube account practically foreclosed with all the same despicable moves of the banks and the link you originally sent out with the Democracy Now! Link broken. This has happened before with Democracy Now!, making them unreliable. Broken links are a big problem. The link should open on the spot. Lynn's message is very important, and all should be done possible to keep it alive, no matter how Lynn's health turns, in my humble opinion. Bob, correct my crass coarseness, but these videos should be seen. I know when I am reaching my audience, and for some reason I am not. It is not about me and Joe. It is about a timely message being thwarted. And then I put something, Justice for Lynn Stewart, and I had captioned this one, Ralph jumps for joy and tells Paula, Gloria about Lynn Stewart's release. I said, peace to you and Linda, dear brother, Paula, Gloria. So, you know, then he wrote something else, and I said, please excuse me for not reading your good response of January 23rd to my January 21st bitching, but this was the more truthful one about my feelings. Originally, my fame on the internet was my work with Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication, so talking about feelings is important to me. Sorry for the confusion, but I really want to stay in touch with Bay Area activists, as I lived on and off at the Center for Dependent Living at 921 Grizzly Peak for 57 years, until my mother's most untimely death in a nursing home. Cynthia Johnson knows the scoop on this. So Berkeley and the Bay Area is my original home. Also, for the record, I like to be noted for my work with my husband, Joe Barton, whose show is Pot Talk with Joe Barton. It is a search engine thing, as we work as a team on his show and mine. It's nice to note the Freedom First Party, but in the end it is all about human beings. I'm sure you and Linda understand this, because in a previous email he had said that he's just kind of like me and Joe, sort of a mom and pop thing. So now on January 30th, he wrote back, Hi Paula, I will have some feedback in a while. As friends know, I generally need some time and patience to your January 27th comments and complaints, which, you're right, were partly confusing following my reply, also partly understandable, but frankly seemed a bit insulting and presumptuous, so I appreciate the follow-up note and clarification. And that excited me. So I said, great, Bob. Solid communication is everything. Thank you. Take your time, because I, too, am trying to figure out what is going on. At the end of the day, I believe the only thing before us is to rid Lynn of the cancer, which I know can be done and has been done by many different methods. But I believe all disease has at its basis heartbreak. And after all, isn't that what good, courageous communication can heal? Let's start with what's most alive with us. I laid out my stuff and always am eager to be corrected. So even if you want to insult, let it fly. So now Bob really rolled up his sleeves, and he started saying things that I feel exceed my ability to comment. And that's why I'm happy to have you on the line on this. I'm going to read what he said and then turn it over to you, Randy, because you'll understand more of I guess you'd say alternative radio, particularly in the Bay Area.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay. Hi, Paula.
I'll try.
Okay. Hi, Paula. Before feedback to your comments as requested, let's first try to clear up some issues and objections you previously raised but didn't fully explain. January 21st message. Where were all these people when Lynn really needed them? Where do they come from now that she is once again politically correct? Why are our videos being shut down by the Lynn Stewart machine? Does this machine actually care for Lynn, or is she just a money-raising device? So you can see I was very aggressive. And he goes, I've agreed with you and addressed the first issue of latecomer supporters, January 23rd, copied below. To further discuss this, basically he sent out a big blast, and I was offended because I wasn't on the blast, and a lot of the other people who were on the blast, I never really saw any of their work. So that's why I got as aggressive as I did. So he goes, to further discuss this problem, there's plenty of political confusion, deception, duplicity, and fear surrounding the history, specifics, and facts of Lynn's case and affecting legal defense strategies, advocacy, and political support for Lynn, i.e. the perceptions, actions, commitment versus withdrawal of supporters. All of the above is colored by and immersed in an environment of ruling class politics and national security, police state terrorism and repression, which include terrorizing, propagandizing, controlling the people with false flag operations, endless war on terror, quote, end quote, and mass surveillance, the persecution, targeting, entrapment, trial, sentencing, incarceration of both Sheikh Abdul Rahman and Lynn Stewart with a terror cover fantasy prosecution, attacking our fundamental constitutional, legal, and human rights and hard-fought won political freedoms. As you know, the left is not exempt from such state attacks and tactics. Many liberal Democrats, progressives, old radicals, and alternative journalists are infected by the same disease, discouragement, and reservations. That's a pretty good start, huh, Randy?
Yeah.
As Compassionate Release campaign organizer Ralph Schoenman wrote, "This is certainly a feature of confusion and political timidity of some who have sought to reconcile support for Lynn with avoidance of exposing the lies and repressive agenda of U.S. rulers, given the crisis of late capitalism and its genocidal consequences. A certain fidelity to the facts would be of benefit here," end quote from Ralph Schoenman. Now, Bob goes on, "You haven't helped me respond to your other concerns by elaborating or explaining what you mean by the Lynn Stewart machine, and suggesting or questioning whether it is cynically using Lynn's cause for making money. See my partial response and request for further info explanation, January 23rd email, last paragraph. Besides the Free Lynn Stewart Compassionate Release movement, see last paragraph, January 23rd email, the only machine, quote, end quote, I know previously associated with Lynn is the Justice and Unity Coalition, JUC group in Pacifica WBAI Radio Politics, which I won't discuss here but refer to later in examples." And incidentally, I believe some aspect of that is now following me on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, which is presently Channel 34, but now that Time Warner has been sold to Comcast, one wonders, will Manhattan Neighborhood Network, who apparently in a contract allowed and knew years ago that Channel 34 would be shifted over into 1,995, which to me means I have not much respect for who negotiated the contract for MNN, because I think it really, really sold out the producers. Before you got on the line, Randy, because I didn't know if we'd be able to make a connection, I was explaining that I feel like a mother with her child, and my audience, we have an intimate connection. So when you take the place where my audience usually finds me, you're essentially taking my audience and you're taking my work, because my work is tied up to my audience and what they think and so on. So anyway, as I understand it, fundraising for Lynn has not been an easy task, and all funds previously raised have gone to her Compassionate Release campaign and legal defense expenses, with an email and address direct to the Lynn Stewart organization and her husband, Ralph Pointer, who personally directed and coordinated much of the campaign and manages the fund. Obviously, I have no problem with Ralph Pointer, because Joe and I saw and covered the hard work that he was doing. I mean, he went out there and hit the pavement and had lots of rallies where there were very few people covering these rallies. We, now and then Joe Friendly, who is so faithful, Truth for a Change, just because he's such a lover, he would go out and cover it. But even there were times even Joe couldn't do it, and Joe Barton was able to cover one when I wasn't when I was in Woodstock. So Ralph Pointer isn't my issue. Currently, there's an effort to raise money for her medical health care needs, starting with the benefits and celebrations of her release in San Francisco and New York City. Please let us know if, how you know or suspect money raised for Lynn is being handled dishonestly or differently. Speaking for myself and knowing others who've dedicated themselves to supporting and freeing her over the long term, there's no question of the deep commitment and caring for Lynn by her family and close supporters. Yes, I agree with that. Including those in the Bay Area who worked to develop and organize the petition campaign and spread the truth about her case, persecution, incarceration, and torture. Since you've interviewed Ralph Pointer and others and want a wider distribution and sharing of the videos you produced, it seems you would have a direct personal sense of their credibility, honesty, and reliability. No problem with Ralph Pointer, but again, when I was in Berkeley and I played the video that I got at the beginning of May last year, when Ralph brought together beautiful performers at Theater 80 in the East Village, I showed that in Berkeley, and the sound was horrible, and people told me that they've never had bad sound come out of their machinery, their projector and so on. So I thought, gosh, was it that bad? I went home, I double-checked my DVD, and it was fine. The sound was good. So also in making that presentation, I could look around and see who the people were. A lot of them were old-timers like myself. I love Cynthia Johnson. But it really looked like there was nothing going on with freeing Lynn Stewart. It was like she had just sort of dropped out of everyone's awareness. And it was wonderful to connect with them and to say, no, Ralph's doing things, and look at this wonderful event at Theater 80. And people, they enjoyed it. They had to strain to listen to it. Like if the sound is bad, even for video production, if the sound is bad, it's bad. So if you want to sabotage something, sabotage the sound, and that really... So moving on with Bob English's email. Related to that, and moving into your January 27th email comments, you've cited only fewer than expected hits, and somehow related a supposedly Democracy Now! Link in an accusation of active suppression of these videos, again by the mysterious machine. As I've said, I doubt the Lynn Stewart organization or movement, Lynn's family, and close supporters would want to censor and block distribution of their own interviews about her political campaign. No, I wasn't talking about that. I'm talking about Democracy Now!'s inability to keep a link lively and active, especially when an email blast comes out. And the only reason I started to pay attention to this is when nobody was caring about Lynn Stewart, Ralph would put up, just with good old-fashioned emails, an open list so you could see the whole chunk of people he was emailing to. I picked those people up off the list. I told them I was picking them up off the list, and I started to pull in wonderful, wonderful new fans from all over the world, particularly people in Germany that were giving me very deep and insightful feedback. We were getting a really profound dialogue going. But as soon as Lynn Stewart's released, everything goes dead in the water. That's what got my suspicions going. So I don't know where it is, I just know there's a problem. So now Bob goes even more deeply into this co-opting stuff. When I think about it, however, you may mean we haven't more actively promoted or helped circulate these videos. Have you contacted and followed up with Ralph Pointer directly? I admit I could have, but didn't think of circulating to our list the Justice for Lynn Stewart video material you you've included with emails, although I'm not sure you actually requested that or which items should be distributed now. With some clarification and instructions, I can correct my inattention. Now, it wasn't that I wanted Bob English to do more. I was just wondering, how come I'm getting so much less when with Ralph's good old-fashioned emails? It was wonderful. It was like the good old days of the internet. Obviously, I agree and commend your belief that Lynn's message is very important and all should be done possible to keep it alive, end quote. Precisely why I've been involved, developed and maintained an information petition update mailing list since early 2013, and why I'm even taking the time and effort to respond here, which is why I'm taking the time and effort to create a show and get your energy on this, which is still coming up, Randy. Bob English may not know how important links are, but boy, I remember a long time ago going into Alan Steinfeld's New Realities list and sending out an email that had a lot of videos when YouTube was just coming on the scene. Prior to that, we relied only on telling people to tune into our cable shows. Well, somehow I made a mistake and sent out to his carefully guarded list twice. But I found out, because his brother's has a software company, I could go into the back end and I saw that these emails were kept around for months. That's how much people appreciated the body of links of different videos showing that this is important. So that may have been Bob English's problem, and then I correct that. My paranoia that Democracy Now! Isn't keeping the link lively. However, at your suggestion, I did send out the correct link in a subsequent message. This working link is still available, not broken. That's not to deny the general link disruption problem you've referred to, but again, it's not clear what you mean. Who's been doing it, how, and why? Now, this is a big question in court. This is why you have subpoena ducus tecum. You want to know which lawyers are associated with which interests or parties who are supposed to have been harmed. So this is why I'm saying I want to learn how to hack, not to go into some Homeland Security website where I don't belong, but just to keep out people who are going into my site and messing with my traffic. So it's like learning how to be a sharpshooter, and that's why I'm a Second Amendment person, considering the camera to be my weapon of protection. About my amended thank you list, I suppose I should resend, and didn't see why you want to question my motives, even if I didn't explain them as clearly as I thought. I've acknowledged and taken responsibility for the mistake of naming a few selected people and groups, thereby ensuring complaints and feedback about those not mentioned. Immediately after Lynn's release was announced, I thanked Ralph Schoenman and Maya Schoen for their crucial work and personal inspiration, and should have stopped there, or generally thanked everyone else involved in the collective effort. But I made a short, but see, Ralph Schoenman and Maya Schoen, to my knowledge, don't have any public access show, and I'm not sure what their presence is on WBAI, but I never heard much from them either. I just never heard anything about Lynn Stewart. I totally depended on when Ralph Pointer came in and started to explain some really, really fascinating aspects about her case, particularly because I was interested in the 9/11, but he knew about the World Trade Center from 1993, the first time there was a problem there, and showed the relationship to the FBI. I do understand the purpose, value, and benefits, as well as the problems of a free-for-all list as you discuss, and I've joined, excelled, battled, and suffered on a few of those over the years. And of course, I sometimes initiate or participate in cluster group email discussions. However, for the intended purposes of distributing Lynn Stewart information, petitions and updates, and getting the truth out, and for other reasons, I didn't even consider an open or closed discussion list as preferred or practical. For one thing, I was asked to forward and post pieces to my contacts and group lists from other primary sources, mainly Pacifica Vallejo friends Ralph and Maya, and from Ralph Pointer. For another, addressing dozens of recipients on the 2 or CC lines would take up the first page, look terrible, and distract from the content. And of course that would piss off some people who, as you know, don't want their email displayed publicly, or to receive random heated replies and exchanges from people they don't know. Sure, you're right, they could just not open the thread, or just delete the annoying or offending item. But we know that's not fine and good enough for many folks who either value email security and privacy, or feel compelled to jump in to vehemently denounce the discussion and or personalities and opinions involved, or at least complain about being included or exposed on an open list or cluster and demand to be removed from your list, or removed even from a hidden list, or worse, see below. Then there are the facilitators and control freaks who insist on exclusive lists with lots of prohibitive rules regulating and restricting topic, content, tone, etc. Ironically, including New Pacifica and my KPFA Watch Community Radio discussion list. So much for free speech radio. I've been through those messes a few times, occasionally to personal and occupational detriment, as when I participated from work in a neighborhood group list, infuriated some folks who delivered a packet of my emails to my boss, resulting in suspension, lost pay and opportunity. Boss later became department GM, but also in further union activism. I know you're going to enjoy this, Randy, and have comments. Because I don't understand what I'm going to read here, and I want to. At the same time, I share some of your nostalgia and longing for the earlier ultra-free speech, wide-open, Wild West Internet days, particularly the old Free Pacifica lists, about 1990s to 2000. Pacifica listener staff movement fighting corporatist takeover regime with non-stop, no-punches-pulled dialogue and diatribes that sucked me in and blew me away when I naively joined in 1999. Also an open workplace list of dissenting SEIU local union members. Do you know what SEIU is, Randy?
Society of SCIU. You know, I should know that, but I don't.
SEIU. It must be some radio union.
Society of Electrical, SCI. Electrical engineers, maybe?
No, EI.
I don't know what that would. I don't know.
Well, I'll get it post-production. I'll figure it out.
It's something about internet or electrical service engineers or something.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely.
I'm not sure exactly what it is.
Well, I'm gonna find out. That I set up to fight both management and the dominant union staff member clique leadership. Sure, there's a place and purpose for a Lynn Stewart discussion group for people who want to exchange info and air issues. In fact, there is one I recently found, but am not subscribed, Free Lynn Stewart at googlegroups.com. Well, I'm no friend of Google. Anyway, probably mostly New York City East Coast supporters, although it isn't an open list as we'd prefer. Now keep in mind, last year when I was out in California with my mother, I was asked to be on an Occupy ethics discussion group, sort of sponsored by Henry George people, and I couldn't make it, and Joe showed up for me in my stead. But I said I would defer altogether to have Ralph Pointer on there. In the entire left forum, there was no mention of Lynn Stewart anywhere whatsoever, and there were 300 groups going. So you can't tell me that Lynn's message wasn't being shut down, or at most just relegated to the people who never get out of prison, those who are in there for decades. I just didn't have the time, energy, or interest beyond what I've been doing with the mailing list to set up, moderate, and participate in an open exchange list. I don't blame him. It took me, nearly 3 weeks to find time and thoughts for these replies. Anyway, we're not in your league of being tech, internet, or media proficient and prolific. Yeah, but I feel he's got a jump on me with radio, which I'm growing to see the wisdom in real broadcast, and you can talk about that later. I realize there's more to your critique than I've addressed so far or can adequately discuss and analyze. The larger communication and trust issue you raise is important and deserves more consideration. Although I've explained and tried to justify some legitimate reasons, my own and others, for not opening some mailing lists and not displaying recipient addresses, I agree there are trust issues, quote, among ourselves on the left between activists beyond netiquette and privacy. Apparently you believe the lack or erosion of trust creates or leads to divisions and conflicts among us that allows Big Brother to step in, end quote. Although it's not clear what you mean or how that happens, by surveillance and control of social networks, closed lists, infiltration of left progressive organizations. Of course, our divisions and disunity are well known, if not a given or characteristic of the left. However, like the political timidity and withdrawal of support for Lynn, distrust and divisions are often engineered by the state and ruling class through terrorism, propaganda, attacks on our basic rights and freedoms, see February 15th email, as well as invasive COINTELPRO operations and agents. As I've implied above in reference to the Free Pacifica KPFA movement and community radio activist groups, I regrettably no longer find or even expect the same free, open, caring, tolerant, unified environment and community of purpose, objectives, and trust, which we both had previously experienced. It's partly finding that former or natural comrades and allies no longer share the same vision, concepts, and objectives, or aren't willing to confront and fight, sometimes against others on the left, to realize them. And I think there are some good reasons for not trusting and respecting some identified with the left. Besides the creeps posing or infiltrating progressive institutions, organizations, and groups, there are entrenched power elites obstructing the same with Karl Rove-like power and control motives, tactics, and no integrity. The reactionary, self-serving staff clique at KPFA and their Wellstone Democrat, ex-CP community allies. What's CP? Ex-CP.
Well, politically correct DC?
Oh,
would that be reversed?
Correct political ex-CP community allies with equivalent or similar power groups and politics at WBAI in NYC and other Pacific call stations. He says Pacifical, maybe that's a typo, Pacifica station.
It could refer to the Pacifica stations in California.
Oh, Pacifical stations, okay. Now control not only station operations, management, and programming, but also our hard-fought won listener staff governing boards, local station board, and recently the Pacifica National Board. That involves long, complicated history and issues that are exhaustively discussed elsewhere, although I'll note here that part of the problem and solution is developing and practicing fresh forms of cooperation, communication, and democracy as alternatives to the corporate board of directors and Robert's Rules models that are unfortunately required, adapted, or conformed to by Pacifica and other progressive organizations. In that respect, my experience working with the Lynn Stewart movement has been a refreshing change of pace, and I'm sure there are other current examples and models of inspired, fresh, united, common cause, open communications, and democracy out there, such as the beginning of Occupy Wall Street and the resistance to the global environmental climate change crisis. As I wrote to my KPFA watch group, and this is the last paragraph, and I'll turn it over to you, Randy, Bob ends it saying, personally, the collaborative, committed work for Lynn Stewart has been a welcome relief and contrasting positive alternative to the protracted, sometimes depressing, nearly hopeless KPFA struggle, especially the seeming dissolution and alienation of our once unified, principled, and determined listener-staff democracy movement, of our continuity, heritage, and will to struggle from the 1990s movement, while engaging this untimely, mostly unpleasant debate generated on the watch list and elsewhere by Peter Frank. Oh, something just jumped on me. by Peter Frank comments, I'd like to remember and balance all the good progressive folks, history, community values, and hard-fought won democratic reforms, institutions, and program changes, though constantly eroded or concealed, against a sense of slipping slowly, sucked back in to a deteriorating morass of, well, let's not sketch it so dark or go down there yet, Bob. Okay, Randy, you take over now and just tell me and my viewers who know nothing about Pacifica and KPFA in California, tell us about radio, Randy.
Well, it's interesting that this is like a continuation of my program Friday night, where I did well over an hour on Pacifica, and actually I spent a half an hour doing Randy's story time called The Christmas Coup, talking about the Christmas coup at WBAI in 1999, which led to the democratization of Pacifica and ultimately the formation of Justice and Unity. You have to pardon me, my voice seems to be dropping out tonight. I don't know where to start. I mean, Pacifica, first off, well, let me go as far as general communications here to find out if you are aware of what both the Supreme Court and the FCC have been doing regarding net neutrality in the last week.
Oh no!
In effect,
tell me, because
we've lost net neutrality. The Supreme Court said that the government does not have any right to regulate common carriers, that the Internet is not a common carrier, that the court nor the FCC will reclassify Internet providers as a common carrier. And just today, one of the big players in all of this was Netflix, because Netflix, in their streaming of movies on demand, used up a huge amount of data on the Internet. And just about 2 weeks ago, when the Internet providers, mostly Time Warner and Comcast, saw that the FCC and the Supreme Court were in effect going to liberate them, just today, Comcast reached an agreement with Netflix. Netflix paid Comcast a whole bunch of money so that Comcast will not throttle back Netflix's ability to be able to deliver movies. Now, this is going to happen with all of the major players that have their sugar daddies and their big, huge amount of money reservoirs, so that things like Hulu, as I said, Netflix, all the other kind of streamers like that, and Internet content providers are now going to be met at the gate of their content distribution with yet another toll that's going to go to the Internet providers if you want to be seen. And now the legal status is that these Internet providers, the IPs, have the right to determine what content that any subscriber or all subscribers are going to be able to get. If they don't like you, you're not going to be, in the future, you're not going to be distributed at all.
But that's public access.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's why public access has always been so important, and fair use. But go on. I mean, I'm just saying that's rebuttable. I'm coming to you from the laundry room in Gramercy Park. Theoretically, my apartment was sold July 3rd. Last summer while I was in California. How come I'm still here? A lot of this is rebuttable, but go on, Randy. This is good.
Oh, I'm just the messenger in all of this.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No, I know.
I'm certainly not stating that this is my opinion. Quite the contrary.
No, I know.
But the problem is that all of us, as you just mentioned in what you were reading, the good old days, the Wild West of the Internet. Well, now it's Wild West for these big ranch owners who are busy putting up fence so that the cows can't migrate from the north to the south during the winter. That's actually what's happening here.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So we're in a really difficult situation with the continuation of the internet as the bastion of free speech and of free communications that it has been until now. On the technical level, there are a lot of websites now, and some very prominent websites that are receiving what could only be described as internet interference. One of the things that just happened in the Edward Snowden thing, not Edward Snowden, but from the Guardian, which is a newspaper in Britain, was that while they were trying to type out, some of the reporters on computers that were not connected online, and they were trying to type out some of the actual data from Edward Snowden before they got invaded and were forced to destroy their hard drives, which had copies of all of the NSA documents on them. As the reporters for The Guardian were typing out their stories, they were seeing that, like one line behind them, everything they were inputting into their computers was disappearing while they were typing it. So all of their effort was, in effect, going into nothing. Now, we are, of course, Time Warner here. And we've had a situation in this TV station while you've been gone, that this is the first night in 3 weeks that the telephone has been working. And as anybody that saw the beginning of the show, I had to jiggle around with the telephone in order to actually get it to work. It's not working like it should, but I managed to get it to work in kind of doing a dial around. So lots of people in the left movement are getting their communications screwed up with the way the internet is evolving now, and eventually what the cable or what the internet providers are going to do is they're going to tier the internet just like they tier cable. Mm-hmm. So if you want to see movies, that's going to be $5 a month. If you want websites, that's going to be $10 more a month. Mm-hmm. If you want certain politically left or alternative websites, they'll just be happy to take your extra $30 a month for absolutely nothing. Probably throttle out your outbound on the internet and
throttle down your outbound. What do you mean throttle down the outbound?
When you're trying to upload something,
right.
Your speed is going to drop to 0.
Yeah, but it's not only left people who want to upload, right? People, everybody, Joe and I always say it's not about what your message is. It's about that everybody should get a fair crack at publicity to their community. It's crucial.
And I agree.
It's being judged by your community of peers. If you can't reach your peers, you're sunk. You're completely.
I agree.
Yeah.
The problem is that these corporations are now legally mandated to be in control. They can do whatever they want, and they certainly have a political message and a political agenda that is 180 degrees opposite of yours and mine and the entire lens campaign.
But Randy, what about piercing the corporate veil? Corporations can't make moral decisions. Only human beings can sort of hide behind, a lot of illusion of the veil of the corporation. But eventually, you have to ascertain how you've been harmed, and then you have to find out what corporation is benefiting which human being. There's a flesh and blood human being. He may have a whole tiers of agents that are preventing him from actually understanding the harm that is happening as a result of what looks like, a bonanza. Because, at one time I made a whole bunch of money getting a license for a cellular telephone company in Kentucky. Now I realize it's a type of monopoly. But it's always better. I've always had the most rewarding and fulfilling times of my life have been working with other public access producers, even on shows that had nothing to do with my interests or opinions or viewpoints.
No, it's a gas to put people on the air. I love it.
But yeah.
Community media is under attack from coast to coast in every methodology.
Well, community anything. You know, I was at a soup kitchen tonight talking to one lady, probably originally from Jamaica, and she was having this great idea to find some old storefront and just start feeding people for, 24 at a time, have some kind of mini restaurant. If you could do that, people have a feeling of self-worth, that they're involved with that. But if you have these little tiny groups doing it, there's no federal funding. Everybody wants, like Jeremy Wilbur said, remember when Ken Churchill went and made a presentation to the Woodstock Town Board to set aside just one football field where a homeless person can go and be allowed to just be? And immediately Jeremy, says, oh, sanitation and this and that. That's just an excuse.
It's going on all over.
I'm talking to the people in the soup kitchens, and I'm seeing the medication. I talked to one lady, very intelligent woman, about how she's in a shelter now, and she's been through 3 different shelters before she lost her apartment, and they somehow managed to diagnose her schizophrenic, and she's on meds now. And she told me
that happens to a lot of people.
She has never tried marijuana. She said, I grew up and they told me it shrank your brain, so I'd never tried.
The Harry J. Anslinger stuff, all those lies.
And she's younger than I am. So she believed that. It's really heartbreaking. It's very difficult to get off those medications. So they say,
and that's the intent.
Yeah, and when Joe was giving his rap, I remember you saying that he enlightened you that legalizing marijuana in New York, if you look at the way the bill is written, you've got to try every single thing else first before you get a crack at marijuana.
That was the New York medical marijuana idea. It wasn't really legalizing like you have in Colorado or Washington.
Yeah, but I'm going to be playing 8 hours of a seminar coming in from Shasta, California, and it's a disaster what's going on, exactly like Joe predicted. At first they have this free fall, everybody gets to grow pot, they have a huge abundance, they're juicing and they're making oil and everything that requires large volumes. And now the restrictions are coming in. And now people can't get licenses who thought they'd get licenses. And the sheriff even blew up somebody's house. And then if you're in trouble, I think it's $200,000 to get a lawyer to get out of trouble. A
lot of this has to be looked at also on this sidebar at when it would be, and I think what you're describing is the proof that it's already happened, that big pharma that sees medical marijuana or legalized marijuana as a huge threat to their little sandbox or their huge sandbox. And there's also a huge desire to get everybody medicated. I mean, all you have to do is watch the media to see what, I like the cousin from Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, where they burned all the books. All of the people there were medicated. They were all tranquilized. They were, you get people on their diabetic medicines because you fed them high fructose corn sweetener and a high carbohydrate diet all their life. So then they get these conditions, and then you medicate the hell out of them instead of just taking all of this artificial sugar out of their lives.
Right.
And that's the way this society works. I want to ask you a question here. How do we want to handle, do we just want to go into the second hour, and if you want to edit this later?
Yeah, I can edit it down. I'll go as long as you want because, Okay,
well, we'll go till midnight because I'm sure we can figure out stuff to say.
Yeah, okay.
But I just wanted to know if you wanted 2 separate shows or not. I'm happy to continue to talk.
Let's just continue.
And since we're between the subject, I'll just do the ID and say you're watching Woodstock Public Access TV in Woodstock, of course. The ID over my